This is Kai Maruyama doing our video 1 for the TED class 2017. And the topic of this video is two videos we watched and kind of the connections between them. The two videos were The Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown and Tidying Up Art by Ursus Wehlri. So essentially, Brene Brown's video talks about how she grew up as someone who was very focused on organization and finding like the facts, trying to explain everything, measure it, and that was like a very core part of who she was. And I think it was that she started doing or working with like social workers or something, like social services. But anyways, she ended up doing a kind of study on happiness and people who had like close relations with others and good relationships. And essentially, what she found was that people who were more vulnerable were more able to connect with others than people who were more closed. She gave a couple good definitions in there. She defined courage as to tell the story of your whole heart. Um, and she said that vulnerability is the core of shame and fear, but also of belonging and love. Um, so, yeah, essentially, the people who are vulnerable, who are able and who open up to others, can do so, can relate to other people because they basically, in doing so, they open themselves up to uh, all sorts of, I mean, they open themselves up to things not going so well. Um, and Ursus Wehlri, his video essentially consisted of him taking some iconic, like, very abstract or uh, kind of, I forget the name of the style, but taking pieces of art and essentially like cleaning them up. So, like, organizing all the little random shapes into like piles of colors and things. And there was one where he took like a Jackson Pollock painting, and then he just had a picture of like three different paint cans. Um, so that kind of thing. And throughout the whole time, he was essentially making jokes about like he's a Swiss guy and he's like um, super organized and everything. Um, but he also did like a little bit of crowd interaction where said something to the extent of like, okay, everybody shake the hand of the person to your right. And so people go to shake the person to the right's hand, but the person to their right is shaking the hand of the person to their right, and it was just mass confusion. And so essentially, his point was that organizing something, having like a set system, does not necessarily make it work. It doesn't, like, that's not inherently simpler or anything, or more effective. And then I think from our discussion in class, we came to the conclusion that with one of his last things that he tidied up, he was making a lot of allusions to like Nazism, like cleaning up the towns by taking all the Jews out of them and the other various people that they didn't like and putting them in these ghettos, like just clean up the town, right? Um, so the connection between these two talks is essentially the idea that, especially when dealing with people who are irrational, strange things, trying to use organized, simple ways of doing things just doesn't quite really work. And when you like try and take something like art, which is a very human thing, especially like this kind of very abstract art as opposed to uh, more like hyper realistic things, it's it's the same thing. Like it's not the same thing anymore. It's not even really close. It's and honestly, I personally thought I liked even the visual appeal of a lot of the tidied up pictures a bit more, but it was like it wasn't like, oh, this picture goes and you just make it a little bit better. It's not something like that. It was a completely transformative thing and made it a different piece of art, which is kind of, I guess that's kind of the point. Like if you go back to like if you go back to um, the Nazism, fascism thing, it's like you clean up the town, right, and make it better, but in reality what you're actually doing is taking a core part of the town, of what makes the town what it is, and just taking it out, and what you get is not the same thing but better, but something else entirely. It like I don't even know where I'm going with this, but um, and then with Brene Brown's thing, um, there's not a whole lot of connection that I saw with like the vulnerability thing there, but I guess it's kind of like one of the ways of vulnerability is just being able to accept that maybe some things won't be organized, some things won't be easily understood, some things might not be understood, period, and that just being able to accept that, even if that does say leave you open to some things, is essentially allows you to move on and live a better life. If you're constantly worrying about the aliens coming down just because you don't know if it'll happen or not, then you won't be able to live your life. And it, for the sake of not being vulnerable, you are putting yourself in a worse position. Um, and I guess that's the connection there, that by trying to organize things, by trying to explain them, you're not really allowing yourself to be vulnerable, especially when it's something that can't really be explained so much. Um, at least not in a simple, understandable way.